Warning, this video is not a scientific review, as I am just a beginner in learning about cameras, but I still do know what good picture quality and what a good camera is, as I am fairly experienced with cameras, just not on a technical side. So if you want an in-depth spec sheet, I will link one in the description for you. Thank you and enjoy the video.
Hello everyone, my name is Computer4Tech and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be having a look at this camera. This is the Panasonic Lumix fz-72 bridge camera. This camera was released in 2013 and seems to be a very popular option for beginners in photography. So you can find it for around £300 on Amazon, or on eBay you can find it lower. I've seen it around £150 on eBay. You can still find it in some retail shops in Britain anyway, and I don't really know about America, but you just have to do some searching around. So, because a lot of beginners opt for this option, let's see if this camera is worth the money you pay for it in 2018, as it is a 2013 camera. So my experience with this camera, I would rate it around 6.5 out of 10. And I'll get into that later on in the video. But let's just see if this is beginner worth it at this point. Do I think it's good for beginners? Well, it has a 20 to 1200mm lens. Yeah. I'd say that's pretty damn good for a beginner camera because it gives you a lot of headroom to do bird photography, to do macro photography, to do landscape, as 20mm is not wide angle, but it's in between wide angle and you get what I mean. Like, I'm using an 85mm lens now on a different camera, of course, but it still seems to be a good amount of headroom for it. When I used it anyway, I was just learning photography myself, and I still am learning photography a lot about it. But this camera has helped me a lot with learning how to shutter speed, how to do ISO, how to do a lot of other things. Of course, watching some different YouTubers as well. But this camera has opened up those doors for me because it's not a very forgiving camera. Because if things are overexposed, it won't give you a meter telling you that. You have to find it out yourself, and you have to look at it. Even though the screen is 3.1 inches, it still kind of lies to you because it may look good on the screen, but then it'll just look bad when you put it on a full 21.5 inch, 24 inch monitor that has decent colours, and will show you the grain and the noise you get. So, the build quality of this camera. The camera is mostly built of plastic. It's a black plastic, and it's not weather sealed at all. I don't believe so. There is a little bit of metal on the lens, and yes, I'm going to include the lens as part of the build quality, as it is permanently attached to the body because it is a bridge camera, which means that you can't change lenses. And the camera also weighs 606 grams, which is a bit on the light side actually, because the camera I'm recording on now, the 77D, is around 1.3 kilos. It will wear your hands out a little bit, but this camera has a smaller body. It's not very uncomfortable to use actually. The body has 13 buttons, 2 dials, and 1 wheel for changing the modes. This camera has 1 HDMI slot and 1 AV out slot, but no microphone jack, unfortunately. This camera has a 3-inch, non-flippable, non-touchscreen camera and a 202,000 dot electronic viewfinder, which is very good because what you see on the LCD screen is what you'll see in the viewfinder, as there is no mirror in this camera. That is why it is pretty light and shorter than my DSLR I'm filming on now. This camera can shoot 6 FPS continuously, but bear in mind that 6 FPS will only last you 3 shots, which I don't really see the point of being able to shoot 6 FPS if you can only get 3 FPS out of it, as the buffer fills up really quickly. The sensor on this camera is a 16.1 megapixel sensor, and it doesn't specify on the specs list online what kind of sensor it is, but it's a Panasonic bridge sensor. So, and you don't really need to worry about the sensor except for the megapixel count, as you can't change the lenses, of course. This camera can shoot in a 4:3 aspect ratio, and a 1:1 aspect ratio, and a 6:9 aspect ratio. But when you shoot in 16:9, you only get 12 megapixels of the 16.1 megapixels. and also the 1:1 aspect ratio. Anything below that, that's when you get your 16.1 megapixels. But I don't shoot in 4:9 or 4:3 or anything like that. I shoot in 16:9 or 1:1. This camera shoots video in 640p, 30 fps, 60 fps, 720p, 30 to 60 fps, and then the max is 1080p to 1080p, 30 60 fps. Also, you do not get slow motion in this camera, so even if you go down resolutions, you still do not get slow motion in this camera. Which, to be honest, for a cheap camera, I wouldn't expect having slow motion in this anyway. Just if you shoot in 60 FPS and do it in post. That's the way I would do it on this camera anyway. The battery is a 7.2 volt, 895 milliamp hour battery, rated for 400 shots, but I've gotten well over that amount of shots. I've gotten around 1,000 to 1,200 shots in a wedding around 4 hours. Yes, 4 hours, that's kind of to its worth. But rated at 400 shots is a bit of a understatement. There, you can shoot more if it's not continuous use. That is, if it's not on all the time. I strategically, well, not strategically, but I knew when to shut off the camera, and that provided me with being able to take more shots. This camera also claims to have an ultra-wide angle field of view. Well, that's not true, because this is a wide angle lens. This is a wide angle lens here, and this is the lens of the camera. This camera has a 20mm lens. That isn't really wide angle. It's breaching wide angle, but it isn't full wide angle, and it's definitely not ultra wide angle, because if it was ultra wide angle, it would be around 10-12mm to below that. Then it would just lead to fisheye lens actually, but 10mm to 12mm is around ultra wide angle range from what I can see, from what I've seen anyway. As I said, 20 to 1200mm, so it's basically from a fairly wide angle lens to an ultra telephoto lens, which is good because I've been able to take photos of birds and also other creatures that I may not have been able to get close to before. Like I've taken a picture of a robin redbreast, I've taken a picture of a sparrow, and one of those birds with the curly beaks. Can't really remember what it's called. I'll probably tell you up here. The minimum stops of light you can get in this lens is f2.8, but that's only at 20mm. If you want to zoom in a little bit more, it maxes out around 5.9. But you can't. But even when you zoom in, you can't change the amount of light that's coming into your lens. It's actually just stays at f5.9 if you zoomed all the way in. So you can't really get that bokeh effect very well unless you're right up on your subject. But if you zoom in, of course, you will get that bokeh, but you have to zoom in a lot on your subject. So say if I was trying to zoom in on me, it'd be like around this part of my face would be zoomed in, then bokeh around it. So I don't personally use it unless I'm taking photos of birds, like the robin, which has a bokeh effect on it as well. And I also took a photo of the local red squirrel that we have around here, and yes, there was bokeh there, but it's because I was zoomed in all the way basically. So this lens on the camera is not a bokeh king. Yeah, bokeh king would be like a f1.1, f1.8, like the 50mm I have now. On an APS-C sensor, this isn't on APS-C, so it's around 85mm equivalent, but it's still f1.8. And if you don't know what f-stops are, an f-stop is basically the amount of light that is let into your lens. So if it's f1.8, that means it's letting in 1.8 stops of light into the lens, which is more stops of light, and the higher you go up, like f5.9, the less amount of light is being let into the lens. Just remember that if you ever are confused about f-stops. The higher the f-stop, the less light goes into the lens. The lower the f-stop, the more light goes into the lens, making better bokeh. If you know what bokeh is, then it's just blurry background and swirly lights, which you see, which is really cool. It's my preferred picture, my preferred picture style anyway. Right, the elephant in the room now. Autofocus. This camera isn't privileged with good autofocus. It's the same in even the newer Panasonic lens, like a GH4, GH5. The autofocus is just especially in this camera, the autofocus is abysmal. You can't really touch the screen like you can like on the 77D. I've been privileged now, by the way. You can't really touch the screen and get your autofocus point, so it won't focus on what you wanted to focus on, especially in auto mode. And the UI is so confusing that I can't really find out how to actually put the focus on what focusing point I want, how to move focusing points. But if I were to do a lot more digging, because even though this is a fairly popular camera, there's not a lot of tutorials on a specific camera online. There's around the fz-1000, and that's the only bridge camera and above I can find in this. But if you just know, if you're going to buy this camera, then it's going to be a hot while until you can figure out how to use the autofocusing system. And as I said, autofocus is pretty abysmal. It's the same in the GH4, GH5. They're not photography cameras, in my opinion. I think they cater more towards filmmaking or home video, something like that. Even though I think Panasonic tried this time to make a good camera with a good lens. The autofocus isn't very good. ISO. The maximum amount of ISO you can get on this lens is 3200, and I wouldn't go past even 1200 to be honest, because 1200 ISO and above 1200 ISO is just gonna be a noisy mess. Honestly, do not go above that. Because this is not a low light camera. Honestly, even at f2.8, you'll still get a hell of a lot of noise, hell of a lot of grain, and it's just not a nice time. So I wouldn't recommend this to anyone who wants to do night photography. I suggest going and getting a better camera, or a camera which you can get a better lens on, which lets in more light. The UI is simple, but jarring. As in, it's simple, like you can find things easily, but it's also jarring because it's hard to actually get the settings you want. And especially when you're trying to do it fast, you cannot, because it just doesn't specify what you're doing that well. Like on my 77D, better UI because I know exactly what I'm doing. On this, I didn't know exactly what I'm doing because it wasn't really specifying what I was doing. There was shutter speed, yes, but what kind of shutter speed was I getting? I don't know, because it was just jarring to me anyway. It was just really jarring. ISO, changing ISO was it easy? You just press up on there's the little button you press the up button, then you can change the ISO, and then you just scroll through the ISO you want. I usually just leave at 200 ISO, just what I usually do. And as I said, even though this camera is fairly popular, there's not a lot of tutorials on it. Maybe if you were to read the user manual, then it would help you, but I don't like reading user manuals. I'd much rather have a video put on it. Now, something I should have touched on earlier. Photo and video quality. I don't usually grade my photos for the premise I'm a beginner, but I still understand how to take photos and what good picture quality is. And I think this has decent picture quality. This is a telephoto lens, so which means you will lose picture quality as you zoom in, but it's not too noticeable, and you can get good photos of it if you know what you're doing and you just want to get the gist of photography. I think that you will be happy with the photos you can get from this, as I have taken some decent photos, like the robin redbreast as I've been saying before, and also the red squirrels and other birds, and also some nice plant shots and landscapes. As you can take some decent landscapes with this, if you know what you're doing with the camera, that is. And I'll probably just show a load of photos. I probably showed a load of photos as I've been talking through this, so just feast your eyes on them. I'll probably put and enjoy. Of course, some of them are overexposed, and I didn't understand how to change the exposure. I do now I know how to change the exposure now, but thank God for Lightroom, am I right? So I have changed the exposure in Lightroom. Now, let's talk video quality. Video quality on this camera is abysmal. Yeah, You may see in some of the videos I have posted that beforehand that were recorded on the fz-72. And you may recall that it's just overexposed. I tried lowering the contrast and stuff like that in DaVinci Resolve when I'm editing the video, but there's still a lot of grain and noise in the video itself. I did get better lighting setup to try and compensate for that, but it didn't work. Apparently it didn't work. So for video, I wouldn't choose this camera for video personally. I'd probably get a T3i, something like that, which I can change lenses, and I can also. The main gripe I have with this camera is the user interface, as it's just not. It's simple, but it's just jarring, and I just couldn't get grips with it. I couldn't use it. Like, I've changed to my Canon 77D now, and well, I enjoy it. I can use the user interface much better than I can with the fz-72. So it's just, I would prefer that they would change if any other. I haven't tested any other Panasonic cameras, but I'm hoping that they've improved the user interface over the years from when they've made this in 2013. Do I think this camera is good enough for you as a beginner in photography? Yes. If you are not willing to invest money into lenses, into a good telephoto lens, which gets you into grips with a lot of things you can do in photography, like if you zoom in all the way in, bokeh, how to change shutter speed. I think this would be a really good option for a beginner in photography. But if you are willing to spend money on lenses, on a decent body like a T3i, then I wouldn't recommend this to you, because you would probably want to up your game in photography. If you, say if you are using a iPhone, for example, I would probably recommend this to you to have a better lens and have a better experience with photography. But I wouldn't recommend it to someone who already has a camera and he wants to up their game with it. I would go to something like a T3i or something you can change your lenses with. So yes, I would recommend this if you're not willing to go into the malarkey of lenses, and you just want to get out there and take photos and not having to worry about anything else but just taking that photo and getting that shot. So that's what my opinion is. I think you should get this camera if you if you're just wanting to get into photography without any hiccups or anything like that, not having to purchase lenses. So, this has been Compute for Tech. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, and if you liked it that much, then consider subscribing and leave a comment on how I can improve my content, or what I should do next in my content. Anyway, this has been Compute for Tech. Goodbye.